John, first off, thank you so much for hopping on Freelancer Talks. Whereabouts are you?
I'm in Brighton, in England. Wet and windy today.
Isn't that what it's always like?
Yeah.
And so I'd love to open up with just a brief intro of yourself. Obviously I've vetted the crap out of you, but would love, in your own words, how would you, give a brief bio of yourself to the community?
Okay, it's complicated. I used to work in TV as mainly as a researcher in current affairs, fairly serious current affairs. And off the back of that, I did a lot of writing. And then I wrote some nonfiction books and did some commercial writing as well. So, writing for comms materials and so on, reports, etc. I went off then and did a very long-term project, which lasted 5 years, which culminated in a book. But while I was doing it, I thought, what comes next? And I thought, well, I'll go back to commercial writing maybe, because there's more demand for that than for journalism. And then I thought, don't really want to do that. And then I had this bright idea of an agency, setting up an agency, a writing agency. And then I had the bright idea of the name Right Arm. So I set up this agency having no clue how to do it, no money either. So I decided to just have effectively a virtual agency. I ran it from my kitchen table and my back bedroom, and I just employed freelancers. And I can't emphasize enough how little knowledge I had. I tried to initially get work from the type of people that were employing me before, which were tended to be public sector, third sector, NGOs, and so on, and got no traction. And then all the demand came from marketers, from marketing agencies of one type or another, and from in-house marketing teams. Now, I had no idea about that world, how it operated. I didn't know to be honest, I didn't know what things like content marketing and even SEO meant. We ended up doing a lot of work in those fields. And so I kind of mentally pivoted towards making the agency, positioning the agency as basically I call it a flexible writing resource for marketers. So freelance, we now have 3 staff, including myself, who do the operations, but all our creative output is by those freelancers that we employ. And off the back of that, I become very convinced that this model is a great model. I call it the kitchen table method of running an agency. And so I've set up a community for similar agencies, not only writing ones like mine, but all those creative professions that operate within the commercial creative industries. So marketers, video makers, designers, web developers, app developers, you name it, all those kind of professions. I've created a virtual community for them, for peer-to-peer support and as a marketplace and other things, lots of content. So yeah, that in brief, and probably longer than you'd expected, is my backstory.
You have me. There's some questions that I want to ask now, but I want to make sure we get some context before. I'm so interested to hear how you, number one, got those clients, because it sounds like usually freelancers, when they start, they go after their old boss, right? Or their old clients that they used to have. And what you said is that didn't work. But so before that, what are some of the typical projects within Right Arm that you usually run?
Okay, they're many and diverse, anything to do with writing. I mean, broadly, it falls into 2, very broadly. On the one side, there is content, sort of editorial content, which is used for content marketing purposes. So that might be anything from a blog post to thought leadership, white papers, ebooks, and so on. And then on the other side is what I call creative copywriting. So that's more like advertising copywriting, and in some cases, it is advertising copywriting. It's more finely crafted, if you like. It's meant to persuade people, basically, to sell, or at least to pick up the phone. But within those 2, there's huge areas of overlap, and we do a lot more as well. So we've done everything from bid writing through to social posts, script writing, a lot. We do copy editing, proofreading, and so on. So anything involving the written word, we cover.
And I wonder, so within that, are there, the classic Pareto principle, right? Of 20% of what you do drives 80% of the results. So have you noticed any projects or type of offerings that really, really drive most of the results?
Yeah, I would say it's mostly the editorial content. So in thought leadership stuff, whether it's short or long form. So it might be a 600-word article, but equally it could be a 5,000-word ebook. That's what really works for us. And the clientele we have, our kind of most solid client base, is in that area. I call them sort of SMEs and scale-ups. So, and mainly in tech at the moment. We've got a very strong track record in tech and in financial services. But they're companies that, they have a marketing team, or in some cases that marketing team is actually one person, but they're overstretched. They cannot produce internally the kind of content that they need to raise their profile. So they come to us. And, from their point of view, the big attraction as well as this flexible model is that, as part of the flexible model, actually, we don't tie them into retainers. So it's those companies that don't have a budget to take on a big agency on a retainer. They don't want the hassle of taking on freelancers, because that's just usually a lot of trouble. And if you do it in the conventional way, just kind of having your little contact book and picking up the phone or emailing them, that I know from experience, from speaking to so many of our clients, that they, the dealing with freelancers in that sort of traditional way is just a pain, and it takes too much time.
Yep. So you're hitting on one of the main problems that facing across all enterprises is they don't want to hire freelancers. And one of the big things that sort of we have to frame shift for freelancers is clients don't wake up saying, I can't wait to hire a million of you. They wake up thinking, I can't wait to get this done. And you as a freelancer are just a means to get their outcomes done. And so just like having a direct report, you want maybe 5 to 8, max direct reports. And so as a freelancer, you have to be sort of that main point of contact. And okay, that's super, super interesting. So one of the follow-up questions is going to be about the buzzwords that your clients are looking for. But so help walk us through what these clients look like, because you mentioned sort of tech, but sort of, what industries are there? Are there any other industries? What are the size of these companies and where are they usually located?
Yeah, well, tech's the big one for us, and we work in any number of niches within tech. A lot in fintech, but reg tech, retail tech, insurance tech. I mean, the list is long and growing all the time. But other sectors, we do a lot in financial services in particular. So that could be anything from sort of consumer end consumer investment products through to heavyweight things like asset management. Work for some substantial investment houses. But we've worked across everything. I mean, we've done a lot in travel. Thankfully, when the Corona crisis hit, we weren't really working in travel much at all. We've done a lot in HR and recruitment, and we've done a lot in a sort of, I don't know what you call it, a general lifestyle, I suppose, and not so much of that recently. Your kind of client profile, well, there's broadly been two. I mean, I described earlier those kind of SME scale-up type companies. So they might have between sort of 20 and 50 people, although we do work for some global giants as well. But the other sort of client we've had historically, and a couple of years ago, they were probably making up about 80% of our clientele, was agencies, other agencies, marketing agencies who are good size and growing, but they don't want to hire in writers because they often need a lot of specialist content. So they would, it's beyond what a single writer could do. So, they might be writing one day about travel and leisure, but the next day they could be writing about some heavyweight tech. So they see us as a useful resource for them when they need to overflow work.
Gotcha. Okay. So we're going to do a little experiment, okay? We're going to pretend that I am the client and we just got into an elevator and we're going to go up about 7 flights. So you have about 37 seconds maybe. What are you telling me?
Okay. Well, I know that people like you face a real challenge when it comes to getting written content. You've got the necessary expertise in house, but those experts don't have the time, and neither do you. You can't afford to take on a big agency on a retainer, and finding freelancers is a real pain. We know that. We speak to a lot of people like yourself. So what we offer essentially is a halfway house solution, a flexible writing resource for marketers such as yourself. We provide the writers that you need when you need them. And the beauty of our model is that all our writers are freelance. So we get you the writer that suits your project and your budget, and you're not stuck with a staff writer who may or may not be right for you.
That was beautiful.
How many seconds is that? Are we at the seventh floor?
I think you're at 37.
Oh no!
I forgot to record.
How long did that last?
That was around 32. That was good. That was good. That was
right,
good.
Perfect. Well, you know, get it. Yeah, good.
So that was okay. So that was awesome. So I think any freelancer out there, that 32 seconds was gold. And literally, I would just sorry, John, but I would carbon copy and I would just learn how to repeat that. But no, just kidding. So I want to get into why the agency. So why didn't you just say yourself, I'm going to be an individual freelancer and I'm just going to go send a bunch of proposals? Why did you go with this agency structure?
Because I thought, I called it a commercial writing agency because I'd done some commercial writing, but I hadn't done that much. And I didn't think I had a strong enough track record. I'm a reasonable writer and I've got better over the years, but I'm not as good as many people out there. And I just thought it's going to be a slog, to be writing day in, day out for somebody like me. I mean, for people we employ, they love it. They're good at it, but I'm not like that really. I suppose I'm a more, I get itchy feet more, and I kind of just wanted to do something that was a bit different, and frankly, would probably be more lucrative in the long term. At the time I conceived the idea of the company, I knew I wanted to have kids, and by the time I launched it, I did have a small child. So I wanted I wanted flexibility for myself. So I made flexibility really put it at the core of what we're offering. So if you like, I was wearing my own needs and values inside out, which has also worked well for us, incidentally.
Yeah, no, that's so the flexibility was the strong portion. Couldn't agree with that more. Yeah. I think one underestimated portion of that agency model too is when you go and you build a business, right? You kind of are always thinking about when this ends, what is the value, right? Like what is the value beyond just me and the time that I spend on this? And so your model obviously has a much, you could sell potentially. There's more value than just the time that you spend. So what would you say if you are one of these freelancers that potentially wants to work with you? What are some of the drivers of success for the individual freelancers?
Okay, well, the first one is obviously you've got to be good, but you've got to be good to work with. We sort of set a great store by that with our clients. We say that we're fun to work with. Now, fun's a bit of an exaggerated claim, of course, because what we do is pretty dry. But I make sure that we're good to work with. We're nice to our clients. We don't rip them off. We take a fair margin on the work that we do, but we're not looking to nail them to the highest possible price. And similarly, we're not looking to nail our freelancers to the floor on price. We set a great store by fairness. Fairness is right at the core of what we do as well. So we need people to align with those values, essentially. And beyond that, on the practicalities, it's about delivering on time. It's about being available when we need them within reason. And we always say to them, your personal priorities have to come first. Just as I've built the agency around my personal priorities, except that people have lives outside of work. So it's almost like a kind of a sort of contract. Well, we do have a contract with them, but there's a kind of broader sort of social contract that we have with them as well. So yeah, it's all kind of about being good to work with, and having values that align with ours.
Gotcha. It's a very cheesy quote, but I think the tangible takeaway is you have to earn the fun, right? You have to deliver on time. You have to, be good to work with, meaning on time, actually being good at what you're
Yeah.
doing. Now, I think one part you bring up that's interesting is this fairness portion. And specifically, I want to get into, as a freelancer, sometimes you feel like you're beholden to the client, right? So the client dictates. And if the client says, I need X, Y, and Z, you just have to listen to them. We know that's not true. We know that a good freelancer chooses good clients and isn't necessarily a punching bag, but really, really owns the engagement. So I'd love to hear on your side, sort of, one, what do you think the proper relationship is between client and freelancer? And two, what are some things to look out for to make sure you're not getting yourself working with a nightmare client?
Yeah. Well, uh, to address the latter point, you after a while you intuit who you want to work with. We've been lucky, we rarely work with a difficult client, and I think one of the primary reasons for that is because we state pretty boldly what we're all about on the homepage of the website. So if anybody's checking us out, they'll soon work out whether we're the right fit for them. And if they'll have to have a sort of honest conversation with themselves, of course. But it's fairly clear what we're about, and people come to us because of that. If you will know very quickly if a client's going to be awkward, and if they are, then look to back out of the relationship whenever's practical, and it's not always practical quickly. It can take a while to get out, but there are a number of clients we've had, not many, where you sort of come out and you think, okay, we've lost quite a substantial slab of business there, but thank God. But one particular thing I say look out for is always try and work with clients that have a marketing department. Or our marketing agencies themselves. If you're dealing with an owner manager, then that kind of tells you two things. It says that they don't have a marketing budget, or if they do, it's minimal, and they don't know anything about marketing. So and this doesn't go for all of them, believe me, and we've got some great owner manager clients, but 95% of our clients do have a marketing department, and they often don't know good product when they see it. They don't know what I say. They don't know what they want, and then don't know a good work when they see it. So that's really important too. And I've seen on quite a few occasions freelancers being really wound up by that. And as the middleman, if you like, we have to smooth over those relationships, and that can be a tough gig. It takes a lot of our energy, and it doesn't produce much in the way of financial reward. It's like they tend to be the lowest paying clients. So I would say that if you want to if you want to avoid bad clients, that's my advice. And as for your second question, you'll need to remind me of it because I've just been rabbiting on.
You answered it.
My goldfish memory.
You answered it. The first question is what is your take on what do you think the freelancer client relationship should look like?
Yeah, well, we're very flexible on that. It's got to, first and foremost, it's got to be friendly and in good humor. And I say to the people who work for us, the client is always right, even when they're wrong. So that's the bottom line in this. And we expect our freelancers to be civil, to deliver on time, and if there are any problems going to emerge, whether it's missing a deadline or whether the brief looks more complicated than they feel comfortable with, then flag it early. Those things are really important because ultimately it's about keeping a good relationship with the client. And even if you want to jettison that client, it's about reputation. So we've never fallen out with a client really. We've had some abrupt partings, but never on really bad terms. And by the way, we've had hundreds of clients We've got a very large client base. So, you know, the proportion I'm talking about is minuscule. But yeah, it's about reputation. It's about preserving your reputation. There is that old adage that you're only as good as your last job. And I think that actually applies to freelancers even more than it does to agencies.
Gotcha. I really like the point you talked about where, you know, in the relationship, potentially having a middle layer, right? So if there's arguments or anything like that, having that middle layer of truth. And I think one area where it's tough as a freelancer is sometimes you don't have that middle layer. Like if you're working with just like in an agency, right? You generally have an account manager, you have the partner, but, you know, beneath the people doing the work. And I think one part for freelancers, the way to kind of replicate that is through the contract itself. And actually, this is one of the hardest parts to help with freelancers is, you know, how do you create that relationship so that you're being upfront, you're being proactive. And one of the huge things we see is it's not only you just taking work, it's you telling the client what you're going to do, and things like having comparables so that the client knows what you're going to deliver. And if that client comes back and says, I expected this, well, you can say, well, this was the comparables. This is what you agreed upon when we started this engagement. So, yeah. All right, we got 10 minutes. And I really want to hear about the kitchen table method. And so I'm just going to give you the floor. And I really, really want to hear sort of what is it, why is it important, and how can freelancers, you know, what takeaways can they have before they go buy the book and you know, listen to the meaty stuff?
Yeah, well, the kitchen table community was designed for kind of two overlapping cohorts. It was people like me who already had a small agency and wanted to be part of something bigger, wanted some peer-to-peer support, wanted a marketplace where they could trade services and so on. We got deals on various products and services too. But the other cohort is freelancers and to some extent staffers, but it mainly applies to freelancers who have got to that stage where they want to do something bigger. They've toyed with the idea of starting an agency, but they don't know how to do it because they're creatives, you know, and creatives, I know, because I kind of am one, are not that good at business. So it's saying to them, look, if you want to start an agency, you don't have to hire staff. You don't have to hire expensive offices. Do it this way. You know, and the mantra I keep using is that, you know, if this idiot can do it, then so can you. And I really was, you know, I was an idiot when I started, and I'm still a semi-idiot. You know, don't be intimidated by it. There is this way, there's this route you can take of setting up a kitchen table agency. So in the kitchen table method, which is my book that came out last year, which I kicked this whole thing off with really, I set out a methodology, a basic methodology, which I built upon in the course for we run this kitchen table community. Obviously it's a virtual online community, but there's a course as part of that. And if you're a member, a full member, you get the course free. And by the way, full membership is free at the moment. You can get 6 months free full membership. With no obligation to carry on if you don't like it when the charging kicks in. But the kitchen table method book, essentially it sets out the methodology, and that is in 4 parts, 4 legs of the table, if you like. The first one is about culture and company culture. And I've touched on some of these things before in this conversation. You need to build, I call the culture, it's the soil from which your agency grows, right? And I gave no thought to this until I was about 4 years into the journey. So, you know, I didn't practice what I now preach. But I've learned the importance of culture, and your culture should be based around your own needs and values, as it was, you know, the way I described my need was for flexibility, and you know, I wanted fairness as well. I wanted to be treated fairly, and I wanted to therefore act fairly. So the culture really has to reflect what you are, what you want. You have to wear all that inside out. So, you know, I say culture is not about having a football table and a beer fridge. You know, that's all very nice, and it can, you know, companies with healthy cultures often have that, but there are plenty of companies with unhealthy cultures that do as well. So the culture is the soil that you grow from, and give it thought. You know, if you're a freelancer thinking of starting an agency, give that some thought and write it down, put it on your website. The second part, oh, by the way, the 4 legs of the table all begin with C, conveniently. So culture, the second C is clients. So it's, you know, how to get them. essentially how to market yourself. But the first part of that process, of the marketing process, has got to be getting a good proposition, a readily understood, sharp proposition that isn't vanilla, which makes you stand out, which makes people look at your website or your marketing materials and say, okay, I can see what they do and I can see why they could help me. So get your proposition sharpened. And then, talk about different ways of going after clients. And, we talk about different forms of marketing for hours, so I won't go into that. The third C, the third leg, is your collaborators, the people you work with, the freelancers. So it sets out, how you find them and how you should treat them, essentially, and what you should expect of them. So this kind of, the mutual expectations. What among other things that I'd recommend in there is, setting out what you're all about, not just setting out what they can expect of you and what you expect of them. And that's not just an informal contract. I mean, I would recommend everyone to produce a kind of, I call ours an introduction to Right Arm. It's very simple. It's for the people who work for us. And it says what we're all about. It says why clients like us. And it says how we treat our freelancers and how we expect them to conduct themselves. So put that in writing. Doesn't have to be long, but make sure that they know what's expected of them and know what they can expect from you. So that's the third C. That's collaborators, and the fourth C is cash. Some of the basics about management of money, which I know because I was there. Freelancers, creative freelancers are often not great with, and it's intimidating. Starting off a company can be intimidating because suddenly you're having to deal with all these, well, you think you have to deal with all these accountancy terms and so on. And the truth is, I don't know that much about accountancy. I've got an accountant; they sort out my finances. But what the basic things you do need to know about: cash flow, your net profit margin, and your gross profit margin as part of that. Those are the key things you need to look after, and that's none of that's rocket science. There are some do's and don'ts, and I've done plenty of the don'ts over the years, particularly with regard to cash flow. But you get the hang of it. So that's in a nutshell is the four elements. And what I say at the end of the book is, do it. It's really not that difficult. You needn't be intimidated by it, and you learn on the job. And the book is basically what I wish I'd read when I started out, and the course adds flesh to the bones there. As I say, you get them both free if you join the kitchen table community, and we do ongoing content for people, for members as well. Webinars and podcasts and so on. So that's my nutshell.
I love that. Okay, so and I like the table analogy with the four different stools or whatever you want to call them. But so it was culture, clients, collaborators, and cash. I think that's a really good. And I like your end part of just do it, right? Like don't get too worried about each part, right? And thinking you have to perfect it. Not at all. Okay, you have one more serious question, and then you're going to have 3 rapid fires. But so. The serious question, you have under 2 minutes to answer it. What will the future of freelancing look like?
Well, the future of freelancing, I think, is about networks, because the traditional company models are breaking down, particularly in the agency world. And we're talking about creative freelancers, I guess. Those, the sort of people we've been talking about earlier, who work within the commercial creative industries. And the agency model will survive, the traditional agency model, but it's breaking down. It's diminishing. So I think the future is for those kind of networks of freelancers, the kitchen table style agency, where you have a virtual team that you can dip in and out of. You make sure you treat people with respect and with fairness. You don't treat them like a Victorian ship owner choosing their crew. You act like you're a company and not a freelancer, which is what we do. There are freelancers out there who don't want to start an agency, but they will become ever more networked. So that's my prediction. And the number of people who are freelancers is just being going through the roof. And the corona crisis, the working from home thing, has made people realize that you don't need, of course, many people do want to be in an office. They want the camaraderie and the buzz that comes with that. But there are plenty of people, particularly people with families, who don't want to be in an office, for whom this whole last few months when we've been in lockdown has been a real eye-opener. They see that they can fashion. They see there's no conflict between work life and managing your personal priorities. Actually, you can shape your work life very successfully and do great work, possibly better work than you did when you were in the office, if you work it around your personal priorities. So that's broadly, my sort of stand back and theorize about where we're going. I think there are more than a few straws in the wind that suggest that's happening.
I love that. No, I think so. The key differentiation for freelancers is the network and the ability to be a company, not just an individual freelancer. I think that's absolutely spot on. And from leading the world's leading companies about what they need, that is exactly what they need. So, all right, 3 rapid fire questions. You ready?
Ready.
What's your favorite tool?
Oh God, my favorite tool is Receipt Bank, which is when you get to you're middle age when you start raving about accountancy software. But Receipt Bank is an amazing tool. It saves so much time on bookkeeping. It means all the incoming invoices and bills that you receive are handled mostly through AI. There's a bit of manual intervention, and it shoots them through to 0 when they've been okayed. If you get a paper receipt, you just photograph it and press go. So that was my biggest time saver, and therefore my biggest tool. Dull answer, but honest.
That is so sexy. That is the sexiest answer we've had in the podcast. I can't thank you enough for the sexiest.
It's about as sexy as a fat guy and naked on a beach.
Okay, this question's even sexier, so I can't wait to hear how boring your answer is going to be. Favorite book?
My favorite book is, I think it's got to be a Patrick Hamilton, either Hangover Square or Slaves of Solitude, or maybe 50,000 Streets Under the Sky. One of those, I think, I reckon is kind of mid-century grim.
A little bit sexier. You got the Hangover in there, so just a little bit sexier. And then, all right, last question. This is where it can be totally sexy. Favorite animal?
Guinea pigs. Because I have to say that because Why? There are two of them.
Why?
There are two of them within earshot of me, and if I said anything else, they'd come and chew my fingers off. So
I'll be honest with you. I did not expect you to say guinea pigs, but I'm so happy.
Neither did I.
John, thank you so much for coming on. Last thing, let's see a thumbs up.
Okay, thumbs up. Thank you very much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Perfect, John.